All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Texas A&M goes back to back, rebounding from the loss against Texas with a nice win over Oklahoma. But we are here to talk about the win over South Carolina. How's it going, everybody? Ben Peck here, all in Aggies. I know it's been a while. We'll get into that in just a sec. But 76-72, A&M takes down South Carolina. We're going to break that game down. Just watched it. It just ended probably about 45 minutes ago at the time I'm taping this. But first, I want to address, I know I've been gone for a while. Big news, and I'll talk about this more on the back end of the episode. I've had a personal kind of career change. I'm leaving the NBC affiliate in College Station in Central Texas. Tomorrow, the women's basketball game, Texas A&M, is going to be my last day at KAGS and KCN over in Waco. It kind of combined into one thing, and then they're centralizing all their operations out of Waco. It's a long story. I'll spare you the details, but that has been sort of what has been consuming a lot of my oxygen, and why really since the beginning of the year, really since December when I knew that was going to happen when my contract is coming up, I've needed to, for my long-term well-being, kind of focus a lot of attention on like where my main source of income is going to come. So that's been sort of my absence, hit and miss for the last couple months. I do apologize, but I'm going to have a lot more time to do this on the regular, since this is the only thing I get to do now for the moment, and kind of keeps, helps me scratch that itch of being in the media sphere. So let's talk about this game. 76-72, Texas A&M. A couple big headlines in this one. First, Wade Taylor ties a career high 7 3-pointers. I know he had it against Nebraska at the NCAA tournament, which was one of his other career highs. I can't remember if he's also had it somewhere else, but I literally looked up and I was watching the game thinking, this feels like Wade Taylor against Nebraska, Wade Taylor, and checked, and sure enough, 7 for, I think, 10 in that game, and then 7 for 10 in this game. 25 points, and they needed every single one of them. Obviously, only a 4-point win, not a lot of leeway to spare. Looking through my notes here, I'm starting to take a little bit more of these now that I get to relax a little bit during these games. I will say it was interesting to start off. Some of these threes were kind of chaotic. With Wade had the first three that bounced off and went in, like got the favorable bounce. And then, by the way, in there, you also had like a fast break transition. Manny Obaski hits a three. Then another one of Wade's threes came on this wild back and forth. I think South Carolina had at one point recently gone down and gotten a fast break bucket. Then ball was getting tipped around. It gets batted near, above the key, and Wade just kind of picks it up, chucks it up, hits a three. So that was not fortunate. I mean, that was skill, but it was kind of, it felt like a tone setter, I guess. Like, okay, if he's able to make these shots and get these things to go, he's going to start, playing confidently. We're going to have one of those nights from Wade Taylor. It was 7 for 10, 4 for 6 from the free throw line. It wasn't one of those. It's 25 points. I mean, it was a good night. And again, from a shooting perspective, great. It still wasn't like a ungodly scoring night, which it felt like it had the potential to be like a 40 point night, honestly. I think it was at 15 points at the half. But Wade Taylor, great. He also had a couple where South Carolina A&M gets up big, or decently big. South Carolina has that little surge midway through the first half, and then Wade instantly hits one of those, I call it the silencer shots. And he does, I think he starts talking to the crowd. I do this stuff, as he said in Austin. And then I think South Carolina, they go down, they answer back, and then Wade comes right back to answer. Like that Wade Taylor, when you get momentum and you feel like you're taking off, and then he instantly says, you know what, I'm going to make sure I assert myself, I take control, and suck any sort of confidence right out of you. I think that's one of those intangible things Buzz Williams talks about. And then, you had the big run after that. They started getting it going. Again, you had some kind of funky plays happening. Andy Garcia hits the three when it looks like he's going to dump it down. CJ Wilcher has another one that goes off the back iron. And then Aggies go into the half with an 8-point lead, 44-36. Offensively, obviously a lot of that was spurred by Wade Taylor and what he was doing. But beyond that, I'm 60% from the field in the first half for A&M, 53% from three. South Carolina, 42-35, respectively, in those two categories. Only 6 for 6 from the free throw line. Not like they were playing terribly. I'll turn the ball over 12 times tonight. That's not a god-awful number. A +2 for A&M in that category relative to what they did with the ball. And by the way, I know we always look at offensive rebounds. Rebounding was similar. 9 offensive rebounds for A&M, 8 for South Carolina. I think only 3 net rebound advantage for the Aggies. So they really did have to come through with the shooting, which is obviously not something that's prototypically their strength, 3-point shooting, but had enough tonight to get through it. 47.8% from three. And a lot of that, most of that coming in the first half, and most of that coming from Wade Taylor. Now I want to get into, there was a stretch in the second half, about 4 or 5 minutes. I didn't see what the final number ended up being, where A&M just could not get a field goal for a while. South Carolina cuts it to 3-2 a couple times. I'll say it never felt nervous if South Carolina would have tied the game. It just would have been like, oh boy, here we go, 0-0. But I would say the word I used was like antsy, or it could get a little squirrely, if you will. It felt like one of those can of worms you did not want to open. And credit to A&M, every time South Carolina had the chance to do that, or they needed an answer, they could respond and they could do what they needed to do to find that answer. Pharrell Payne came through with a couple of those, and it kind of helped settle the storm. He had the semi alley-oop. I think he had another inside bucket, and I think that tempered the amount of confidence South Carolina could play with, not necessarily internally, but again, you get everyone in that building. I think they're looking for their, I want to say their first SEC win, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, they're 0-9 in SEC play. So they're looking for their first SEC win. You get that crowd believing. Scary things can happen in college basketball. We saw it. I mean, look at Baylor upsetting Kansas. Look at, just in terms of chaos, this was the road team doing well, but Kansas State beating Iowa State earlier today. Weird stuff can happen. So you do not want to allow that to happen. And the Aggies, I thought, did that. That Pharrell Payne for that stretch was good at settling things down. And I want to have a discussion, by the way, in a couple days about Pharrell Payne and Zurich Phelps. Which player has been more, I don't want to say impactful or better. I'm not trying to go like Aggie versus Aggie and pit them against each other. But in terms of like the piece to the puzzle that they fit and what they make available to this team, which ingredient has been more necessary for A&M to succeed this year? I got to think of how to phrase that, but I think you understand what I'm saying. They both in their own way serve such crucial, I wouldn't say needs, but it's like they're very additive in terms of what they bring to the team and the way they can elevate the team. And I think Pharrell Payne is, especially when we're talking about that stretch where they're not scoring field goals, a key guy when you start thinking about, okay, we're not scoring the way we're trying to. Let's just dump it inside to him, let him make a play, and then teams start doubling him up. Obviously, that opens up spots. And when you are having nights like this where you're shooting pretty well from three, you can, or at least average, even the second half. They struggled 30% from the field, 33% from three, A&M in that second half. But 33% from three, only 2 for 6, so not a lot of volume. But that's manageable. You can live with that. So I thought Pharrell Payne was huge, just in terms of settling the storm. Another thing I'll just say, a big ethos of mine for basketball, and I'll hit on this theme throughout the year, and and with all my shows, if y'all keep joining us throughout the season. One thing I would say about the kind of these lack of field goal stretches, and this is an A&M problem, and I don't think A&M necessarily has this mentality or doesn't have this mentality that I'm about to say, but I've always thought, basketball is in a weird spot with like the math and the analytics to where, use the classic example of like 1 for 3 from 3, 33% is the same as being 1 for 2 on 2-point field goals. And I think NBA, the games are long enough and there's enough possessions where you can buy into that. You go for the most efficient shot and you kind of go into it knowing you're going to probably have an 8-9 point run or advantage of a stretch, and then they're going to have theirs, and that's just how it goes. But on aggregate, it will be better to shoot the efficient shot. I think with college, what's always stood out to me, especially when you build up a lead, you want to keep the needle moving forward. I mean, if you go look at any sort of upset or comeback in like the ESPN game tracker where you can actually see it like it's a graph, you'll notice common theme is there's a big straight line. It's literally like a pulse indicator. Like your team, your offense is dead. They do nothing for like a 5-minute stretch, and that's usually when stuff happens. I've always thought in the same way that baseball fails to capture the importance and the essence of like not all outs are the same. Just I get an outs and out, but a ground out with the runner on third with 1 out is a lot better than a strikeout. But I think sometimes baseball overvalued or undervalued that fact. I think there's almost an argument to say, if you get a 1 for 3 from 3, 33% look, but you can have a 45% look from 2. If you are struggling to get a basket, you're almost better off taking that shot every now and then, just to, again, keep that needle moving up. Don't let South Carolina or whoever tie the game or go on this run or be scoreless. I know you're potentially going to end it with a 3. And again, I'm not saying A&M had that problem tonight or buys into that, but I've just always thought when you're holding on to a lead, crucial to, even if it is negligible, don't make it easy for a comeback, if you're up by 9 to where 3-4 buckets and they're all tied up, make it, okay, they're down by 9. We're going to make them go on, instead of a 9-0 run, make them go on a 13, can't do math, 13-4 run, a 14-5 run, something like that. Extend the amount of time that they have to play really well instead of making it easy, so to speak. So Pharrell Payne, to kind of circle it all back and tie it all together, I think he's a crucial player in terms of those moments and helping move the needle forward. Another guy who fits that bill, Henry Coleman. He had the nice put back after they give up the bucket, the free basket where they over rotate, A&M does, and they get a little dump down, and then Henry Coleman goes down and then gets a putback bucket on the other end to, again, just settle it down, keep South Carolina still within striking distance, but keep them away from being tied at the very least. And he finishes tonight, Henry Coleman, 12 points, 8 rebounds. I tweeted this out. If you look at games against SEC opponents only, so we're not talking non-conference, 2 years ago, he had 8 games with 10 points, 5 rebounds in SEC play. He had a couple double-doubles. I think he had one stretch, double-doubles back-to-back. Last season, he had a stretch of 3 of those games in a row at one point. He had 5 total. This year, and again, I know we're only halfway through, so a little apples to orange, but coming into this week, he had 1. He had that type of game against Alabama, but he did not hit those numbers in any other game, and then he hit it against Oklahoma. I want to say Oklahoma, it was 14-6, something like that, and then 12-8 here tonight. And again, notably, which I failed to mention, a night where they don't have Solomon Washington once again. 2 games in a row, you don't have Solomon Washington. Henry Coleman, 30 minutes. We're starting to see, and I hope, and I've been asking for this for the last 2 years, we can maybe see that Henry Coleman of 2 years ago, who, he alongside what him and Julius Marble did for a little bit. If you could see sort of Coleman along with Pharrell Payne and this season, like Anderson Garcia now compared to where he was 2 years ago is much improved as well. And then you add in a guy like Solomon Washington, I think that becomes a nice front court unit. And that's my hope moving forward. Wade Taylor keeps cooking. Henry Coleman keeps coming on strong. Manny Obaseki keeps playing with confidence. 7 points tonight, 1 for 3. But he did get to the line for 6 free throws. And the Aggies get the win 76-72. This was kind of one of those that you needed to have. I mean, not in terms of like it's a disaster. It is a disaster if you lose it. But just from a not maturity standpoint, I mean, this group's pretty mature. They've played like 5,000 games when you go down the roster. But just I guess when you think of like, okay, from a handling your business standpoint, is this team good enough and consistent enough to just handle the business when the games are supposed to? They didn't handle their business, of course, last week in Austin against Texas. Tonight, I think largely they did. Got a little antsy, but not too antsy in the second half. But made enough plays to carry through and get the win. Up next, actually can't remember off the top of my head who is up next for the Aggies. I'll bring it up right here. It is Mizzou on the road, so they get the bye. That's right. They get the bye, and then on the road at Missouri next Saturday. So a little extended break for them to get ready for their next game. Again, women's basketball getting ready for Texas. That's coming up tomorrow at 5 o'clock. My last day at my station, and then I'll also come on here and talk about that. Now, that is the recap portion of this. Let's break and talk about a little bit of what I've got going on in the future of this channel. The channel's not going anywhere. Just to expand on what I talked about earlier. 3 years here in College Station at the local NBC affiliate. About 18 months ago, I tweeted a video about all this too. If you guys saw that, this will be a rehash of it. But for those that didn't see, about 18 months ago, last August, not this past August, but one before, we consolidated our College Station NBC with our Waco NBC. We're owned by the same company. It's technically the same media market. And that is where all our resources and facilities are. So they decided to, instead of try to operate like a shoestring budget station in College Station, let's go ahead and consolidate the two. We kind of take some of the workload for us in terms of making one big syndicated product, but that also meant we were kind of stretched thin going back and forth. Then we kind of lost a few sports members and hadn't had those positions replaced. And there was discussions over like the year-long period when Justin Woodard left down here with me, and it was myself here, Nicole Sheeran in Waco. And then it's like, okay, what's the future of this going to look like moving forward? They ultimately decided they want to centralize everything out of Waco and just move forward with that. And they're not going to have like an actual person in College Station doing sports. So with that, they informed me, they decided my services in that role would no longer be needed. My contract is up tomorrow's my last day. And then I'll be moving on from them. So that has been a big, I don't want to say suck of my energy. I'm trying to think of a less terrible way to put it. That has been a big consumer of my time and has sort of taken away a little bit of what I've been able to do here in the consistency. And also I've had computer problems. I've been using their computer. My computer's in the shop. So I'll be able to get stuff tomorrow. After that, it's a little bit up in the air. I mean, I can make some videos off my phone. It might look a little ratchet for a few days, but you'll just have to bear with me as I try to get some content out there for you guys, because I do want to do that. And I'll get creative in terms of being able to upload videos whatever way I can. But just bear with me. We've got a lot going on, again, in my personal life. And I know I've alluded to that over the past several weeks. That's kind of been the elephant in the room. But now cat's out of the bag. So now I have a lot of time I'm going to dedicate to this channel. I've got nothing else going on. So my intention is to stay here as long as I can, to do this channel as long as I feel like I can do a good job with it and I'm plugged in and everything else and give you guys interesting content. And so thank you for bearing with me. I know it's been kind of crazy. For the OGs out there, appreciate you guys. Anyone coming in new or maybe who came along and wondering what was going on, that's the situation. But moving forward, we're all set. We kind of, now that I don't have to actually go into work and do all that and figure out, go back and forth 2.5 hours every day if I need to go into Waco or something, got a lot more time on my hands to focus on this channel, on you guys. So thank you so much. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Again, we'll have much more coming up your way starting tomorrow, women's basketball. And then, my intention is to post daily content as much as I can Monday through Friday. And then maybe take some days off if there's, weekend content or something, slow day in the middle of the week. But at least 5 days a week, that's the plan. So thank you so much. Again, subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate you stopping by. And we'll see you tomorrow for some women's basketball recap as the Longhorns take on the Aggies.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.